Hour number 2 now officially underway of the early line. Sirius XM Channel 159 right here on the SportsGrid Network. It's Davis and Donnie in the morning talking all of the hottest topics, which to start hour number 2, maybe the hottest topic here in the playoffs is the injury topic. We'll find out a little bit later about Kawhi Leonard, if he's going to start their series for the Clippers. We just talked about Zion Williamson with a hamstring injury. How's that going to affect him going up against the Kings? But looming maybe even larger is in the city of Milwaukee. Giannis Antetokounmpo yesterday tweeted out by Adrian Wojnarowski, a Woj bomb to say the least. We knew he was injured with a calf injury, but it looks like now, Davis, we might not see Giannis early in this series against the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would probably bet against it at this point because the Bucks, I think they sort of understand not their best effort this season, right? You fire Adrian Griffin after 47 games. You bring in Doc Rivers, who is doing TV. Doc Rivers fixes the defense to some extent, but then the offense really started to lag behind. It feels like the Bucks have such a weird roster with two horrible defensive players in Damian Lillard and Malik Beasley, who have to play a bunch, and then two incredible defensive players in Giannis and Brook Lopez, who have to play a bunch. And then Chris Middleton is supposed to be the ideal fifth guy, but he is never healthy, never plays. Sometimes he can only play like 20 minutes a night. I mean, the Pacers are going to win this series. If Giannis does not play 2 games, if he misses 2 games, I mean, the Pacers are winning those games, and then yet the Bucks have to win 4 or 5. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and bet against that happening. So the Pacers, and welcome to everyone on radio, Davis Maddock and Donnie Rightside here with you on the early line. The Pacers are, I mean, certainly they're not a great team. I don't think they have any chance of beating the Celtics, which means they can't win the NBA championship, but they do have this incredible offense with Tyrese Halliburton, who is basically the best passer in the NBA. Pascal Siakam, since trading for him, they've been 17th in the NBA in defense, which doesn't sound like anything, but they were the worst defense in the NBA, non-Pistons, non-Wizards division before trading for Pascal Siakam. So pretty big improvement there. They have no chance of winning the series if Giannis misses 2 games, in my opinion.
The crazy part about it, too, is Giannis is a great basketball player, but they weren't playing anywhere near great basketball even when Giannis was in the lineup. Damian Lillard trade here seemingly not working out as harmonious in the locker room as you thought it might have been. Now, if you're down for the first couple games, and also these games are home games. You're supposed to win these for Milwaukee in an extended series. You go down and lose even one of those first 2 games. Now you're behind the 8 ball. But if we take a look at the odds market and how it's shifted here at the FanDuel Sportsbook with this injury news that came out yesterday, round number 1 favorites to start, a -220 price. That's down to -118. Conference championship prices, plus 550, now to 8-1 here. And championship looks, a 12-1 price that has shifted back to 15-1. Let me ask you this question here, because we'll get to the series in a second. Heading down the stretch, something we haven't seen before, right? As you talked about, coach getting fired midway through the season when they had a great record because they felt like this was the coach that couldn't get them over the top. They bring in Doc Rivers because apparently he's the guy that's supposed to get them over the top, and it hasn't worked out at all here. What are we actually expecting? Let's just say Giannis does play in game number 2 and they're down 0-1. Is it just so easy to say, I don't care if Giannis is back or not, this team was broken once Doc Rivers became their head coach and you can't trust them?
I don't think it's that. I actually think Doc, compared to Budenholzer, probably is a little bit better at in-series adjustments. I mean, Doc, there's this idea that Doc Rivers is this horrible coach and he just got so lucky with those great Celtics teams that he had. And, he did so bad with the Clippers. He did so bad. I mean, I don't buy that. I don't think Doc Rivers is a terrible coach. I just don't think that Doc Rivers in today's NBA is anything like one of the best coaches. I actually think the role that the Bucks brought him in for probably is what he's best at, which is just stabilizing a ship that is rocking back and forth. You can get a pretty steady ship. I mean, Doc Rivers has coached a lot of winning playoff teams. The concern that I would have, and I think this would be the concern that the Bucks organization would have, would be obviously Giannis wants to play. Obviously, Giannis does not want this season to just be a total waste. They trade all these assets for Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard is an older player. How many playoff series is Damian going to be close to at his peak form? But for your long-term organizational stuff, you cannot have what happened to Kevin Durant happen to Giannis, which is he comes back too soon from a lower leg injury, and then he ends up popping his Achilles. Because if that happens, by the time Giannis is again ready to play basketball, I mean, Lillard's probably done, right? Lillard, I believe, would be 36 in the 2025-2026 NBA season. So then you're talking about a 36-year-old point guard, Chris Middleton. I mean, who knows what Middleton's health is going to be like 2 years from now? He could barely play this season. I mean, it would just be, they would have, I actually think if Giannis ended up missing a whole season, their best, they would just totally tank, right? Trade everything that's not nailed down, try and recoup some of your first round picks, figure that out. But if I was in charge of the decision making there, I actually would say, you know what? It just was not our year. Giannis, go home, rest, get your calf right. It's just because it's not what your whole organization from top to bottom would be ruined if Giannis suffers like a an 18-month injury to his Achilles.
Now it's time for Thanasis to step up in the biggest moments and carry the Antetokounmpo family there in Milwaukee. If you look at the Pacers-Bucks series prices here, money line here, if you're looking just on the series, the Bucks minus 118 price, the Pacers plus 100. Drastic difference to what we saw from earlier yesterday. Spread on the series, the Pacers minus 1.5 games at a plus 138 price, and the shortest game of the series goes 6 games at a plus 195. How did your series approach change with this Giannis injury here, Davis?
I mean, I actually think these series prices are too heavily pricing in Giannis returning. I mean, one, it would not be insane for Giannis to return in game one and for the Pacers to win this series anyways. Like, the Bucks have been bad. The Bucks have been they haven't been bad. The Bucks have been way worse relative to what we expected them to be this season. I like that spread price a little bit there, basically just saying either Giannis doesn't come back or Giannis comes back and does not play very well, or has to play some sort of limited minutes. I don't know if I should say I'm high on the Pacers. I probably am right about on the market, but a weird thing has happened this year where Halliburton came out so good for the beginning of the season and then suffered that hamstring injury, and he's been a lot worse. I mean, what is he at? He's had 9 days off by the time this series starts. Maybe Tyrese Halliburton is basically, in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, and his hamstring is going to be 100% good to go. And if Halliburton is back playing like he was the first 2 months of the season, you could make you could make a pretty real argument that the Pacers are just 1 through 8, just like the better basketball team.
Also, it's going to be interesting to watch this play out in this playoff series is that Indiana Pacers pace that they typically like to play with in the regular season. How does that extend into the playoffs? And also, if Giannis does come back, is he going to want to run up and down the court at a higher pace here? A lot of things to watch and certainly some intrigue now with Giannis Antetokounmpo, certainly to miss at least one game in the playoff series against the Indiana Pacers. A lot more going on in the Eastern Conference. Let's continue the playoff talk next, right here on the Early Line.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
NBA playoffs certainly underway in a big way. Doubleheader last night, doubleheader tonight. Teams moving on, teams going home. A lot of added intrigue here. But the one thing we always like to take a look at is even though games are being played, the ever-changing odds market here at the FanDuel Sportsbook to win an NBA championship as follows. Of course, it's the Boston Celtics at a plus 165 price, the Nuggets at a 3-1 price. Then that shelf sort of a hit there. That's the Clippers at 15-1 and the Bucks at 15-1, followed by the Thunder, Mavericks, Sixers, T-Wolves, Suns, and Lakers here. As we look at this market, as we approach the, I guess you could say, the true start of the playoffs when the 1 through 8s get underway, is there value, Davis, in this market for you?
You know, there is a little bit of value in this market because how many times have you seen the number 1 seed, the best team in the more difficult conference, be listed at 16-1? I mean, the idea that the Clippers are a better team than the Thunder, or that the Bucks are a better team than the Thunder, it's laughable. It's laughable because, and you might say, oh, well, the Thunder, they're a bad matchup for Denver. You know, they play too small. They only have one real center on the roster that they're going to play. They're going to be playing these back, you know, Jalen Williams might be the backup center in the playoffs for the Oklahoma. They smoked Denver in the regular season. They were the way better team than Denver in their meetings in the regular season. Denver only won one game against them. And I know I'm a little bit biased here, been a Thunder fan since they were a team, since they were moved from Seattle. But this was the best team in the Western Conference. They were deserved number 1 seed. They're unbelievable on offense. They're a top 5 defense. They have 3-point shooting. They're one of the deeper teams. Actually, they are, I think, the deepest team in the Western Conference. They go 10 deep with guys who can play in the playoffs. 16, I mean, I think they should realistically be 10-1. So you do with that what you want. Do you think that the edge from 16-1 to 10-1 is worth betting when the Nuggets are as good as they are? You know, I don't know, but I know that number's wrong. I mean, I don't know if it's worth, like, you got to get $500 down on it or whatever, but the number is not accurate.
Doubleheader tonight, Davis. Philadelphia 76ers and the Miami Heat, followed by the Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls. Let's take a look at the FanDuel Sportsbook right now and take a look at the play-in picture, which means who has the best chances to get to the playoffs and who has the best chances to win the conference once they do make the playoffs here. The Philadelphia 76ers as that 7th seed, obviously the best market numbers, minus 1,800 to make the playoffs, which means if the Philadelphia 76ers win tonight against the Heat, they are in as the 7th seed, just like you saw with the Los Angeles Lakers last night. If the Sixers lose, they still have a chance, and they'll take on the winner of the Chicago Bulls and the Atlanta Hawks at home. Similar factors there for the Miami Heat as well, but the Sixers minus 1,800 favorite here to make the playoffs. The Heat minus 590, the Bulls plus 490, and the Atlanta Hawks at a plus 650 price. If we look just at that market alone here, Davis, Obviously, betting the Sixers at minus 1,800, not a lot of value. Still with the Miami Heat, minus 590, not a lot of value. Is there value or any chance in your mind that either the Bulls or the Hawks will be able to make the playoffs here as a top 8 seed?
No chance. No chance. I'm putting it at I'm putting it sub 2% that either of these teams ends up, because the Heat and the 76ers are just in a different stratification than these teams are, right? Like there's not one player in Joel Embiid would have won the MVP this year had he not suffered that meniscus injury. He's far and away the best player in this group. And I mean, I just have such an intrinsic belief in Eric Spoelstra and the Miami Heat. They are not going to screw this up. You know, there's just no way they are going to lose an absolute must-win game to the freaking Chicago Bulls. It just is not going to happen. And if it does, you know, whatever, you know, play this clip. You and I are going to be doing this show for the next week, so you can end up mocking me about it. But just, I mean, in fact, I would not be surprised at all if the Heat just handle the 76ers. Like that is just how much I believe in them as a team as an organization.
Let's take a look at the Philadelphia 76ers and the Miami Heat, how they line up tonight. Now, for a good period of time, this line was 4.5, but today at the FanDuel Sportsbook, we see that spike up one more point for the Sixers favorite at minus 5.5. Total in this game listed at 208. If we're looking at some of the betting conditions at the FanDuel Sportsbook, 6 out of every 10 wagers coming in here on the Philadelphia 76ers. I'll ask you this to start here, Davis, for the handicap. Do you agree with this line movement? Should this line be getting longer in the Sixers' favor or shorter by the Heat side?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 76ers are a much better team than the Miami Heat based on the evidence of what we have seen them do as NBA teams this season. With Joel Embiid, the 76ers were the second best team in the Eastern Conference, the third best team in the NBA, behind only the Nuggets and the Celtics. Obviously, they were a lot worse because, I mean, their entire roster is so heliocentric around Joel Embiid. It's all built to exacerbate his strengths, to play defense with him at the center. So when you had, you know, Paul Reed in there, when Tobias Harris is playing backup center, like, of course it's not going to be as good. You know, it's just not really the way that it works. There is a couple interesting things going on with the Heat. They might not have Duncan Robinson, and Terry Rozier is not going to play in this game. So Rozier is not going to be able to go for the Miami Heat. That is a big miss, because I suppose that means, I mean, are they going to try and play Butler, Hierro, Jaquez, Bam, and Kyle Lowry all together? That's a very small lineup against us. That is a very, very small. I mean, that's asking Jimmy Butler to play power forward, basically, in that lineup. I don't know how that's going to work. The one way I could see the Heat ending up winning this game, and I don't think it's very likely, would be for Hierro to just have an unconscious shooting night, just like one of those nights where the basket just looks too big for him and he makes like 10 3-pointers or something. And it's so funny. Hierro does get, I mean, he just gets completely disregarded for the Heat because they made that playoff run without him. I mean, he's not a good defensive player. He is like such a good offensive player. I don't know why people are so quick to dismiss him, but he does add a different element to that team. But Maxey and Embiid, I mean, I think they just handle business here.
Hot team coming down the stretch, too. The Sixers getting Joel Embiid back. Tyrese Maxey as well, playing great basketball. See how that plays out in the city of brotherly love. The tail of the tape here, pretty close. And obviously, that's why they're the 7 and 8 seeds here. Philadelphia 76ers, 47 and 35 on the season. The Miami Heat at 46 and 36. We'll see how that plays out tonight in South Philadelphia. 7 p.m. tip-off. Love to see that. Game number 2 tonight. The long shots. That's the Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls. 3-point favorite here by the Bulls. So basically that line opened up at the FanDuel Sportsbook, Davis, at 3, stays at 3 today. The total, however, which is unlike a lot of games so far, opened up at 219.5. That now is up to 222. Preview of the Hawks and the Bulls. Is it so easy to take the home team here, or can the Atlanta Hawks pull off the mild upset in the Windy City?
You know, I don't have a real opinion on a side here. I mean, I think these are two bad teams that basically just totally made it in via, I mean, I don't even know if it's luck. It's just that the other teams in the Eastern Conference, like, did not try. Like, they just like, wait, okay, you beat the Raptors, the Pistons, and the Wizards. Like, congratulations to you. Not really congratulations. You know, the Brooklyn Nets, who like have the weirdest roster. Like the Brooklyn Nets roster is not even a roster. It's just a bunch of spare parts that are going to be traded for something else later. I do like the over in this game, though. Basically, I think that the the Bulls lineup is too big for the Hawks. The Hawks are basically playing two wings, two guards, and a big man at all times. And the Bulls have I think they might have the tallest starting lineup in the NBA. White, Caruso, DeRozan, Williams, and Vooch. Like they're definitely pretty close to it. Just a big team. And the Bulls' defensive strength is in the backcourt in White and Caruso. And you can say a lot of things about Trae Young. You can say a lot, and Trae Young's probably not going to be a Hawk next year, but that dude gets buckets. Like Alex Caruso, I'm sorry, great player. You are not stopping Trae Young from getting 27 points in this game. It's just happening.
By the way, we do have I believe, an odds boost that was up here at the FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm not seeing it right now. I believe it was 25 points out of Trae Young and 25 points out of Tyrese Maxey. If that pops back up, hopefully it does sooner than later. We'll be able to take a look at that. But doubleheader tonight in the NBA. Should be a lot of fun to watch this play out. Also, it'll be interesting to see because coming down the stretch, talked about the Philadelphia 76ers here, Davis, being so hot with Joel Embiid to see if they can continue that. You saw the final games here. The Chicago Bulls played toe-to-toe against the New York Knicks, where the Atlanta Hawks got absolutely blasted by the Pacers in their final game. The Mouth in the South coming up next to talk a little Kentucky basketball. Top 30, top 20, top 10, top 3. Let's find out next. Come on back.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hoffman right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted. But here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Hour number 2 here in full effect on the early line, Sirius XM channel 159, right here on the Sports Grid Network. We're going to talk a little college basketball action, a little NFL draft, some Major League Baseball. Donnie Rightside, Davis Maddock, and time to introduce the mouth in the South. It's Mark Zinno. Mark, Wednesday morning. How we feeling today, buddy?
Well, from what I understand, I mean, I feel great, and it's always great to be here. But, we are taking victory laps today, I understand, and one Ben Stevens lapped himself out of the country just to avoid it.
By the way, we are going to have some fun with this, and it's time to talk some Kentucky basketball. But we got to set the stage here in the morning of how well things appear to be going with Big Blue Nation. Let's take a look at that press conference here with Mark Pope.
Guys, we see these introductory press conferences all the time now. Nobody in the world has ever seen anything like this. But I'm about to break tradition. Amen. I'm about to break tradition. At every one of these press conferences, the coach comes up and he stands there with the AD, and they take a picture with a jersey that they just made that ends up in a closet somewhere. We're not doing that here.
How about that? The big rally, 22,000 people show up to try to convince themselves that Mark Pope is the right hire for Kentucky. So let's have at it round 2. Mark, is this the right move for Kentucky? Are they back on track?
Well, look, I mean, there are people who get, their sixth choice for senior prom and end up marrying them. I'm just probably not going to be one of them. So that is Kentucky right now, as they went through several other options and finally landed on Mark Pope. And, quote, got the guy they wanted. It was a job that nobody wanted. Otherwise, there would be a different coach there and there would be a different celebration. And maybe 22,000 people would have showed up regardless of who got that job. But, look, if you want to win the press conference, they did it, right? If you want to win the moment and make yourself feel good about, the actual hire, they absolutely did that. I think they were smart to play it up the way that they did. But at the end of the day, when they start bouncing balls in October, if you don't start winning games and win them quick at Kentucky, guess what? Everyone's going to laugh at the whole press conference. Everyone's going to laugh at the 96 team getting off the bus, and everyone's going to laugh at Kentucky. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but ultimately what we talked about with this job and what you and I agreed with that Ben, sort of disagreed with the idea that it's not a top job anymore because the expectations aren't going to match what the reality is. And right now, Kentucky doesn't match reality of the expectations because guess what? They haven't been a very consistent basketball team, particularly on the defensive end. Now, will Mark Pope fix that? BYU was 60th in the country in defensive efficiency last year. That's a big upgrade from where Kentucky was. But, can they do it? And can they do it in the SEC is a different conversation.
I mean, running the Mark Pope system with NBA level athletes, I think, is something I'm pretty interested in watching. They led all of college basketball in 3-pointers attempted and made last season, and getting some guys in who can do that at a higher level, I think, is probably going to lead to winning basketball. One of those guys is going to be Colin Chandler, the former number 33 overall recruit in the 2022 class, has transferred from BYU and is headed to play for Mark Pope at Kentucky. I mean, if this is the direction, Zinno, that the program is going in and they get more top 50 recruits, I think the ceiling is pretty high for this group of guys.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the danger. And anybody who bet the NCAA tournament realizes this. You live by the 3, you die by the 3. And guess what? It's really hard to win a national championship, because that's the standard at Kentucky, when all you do well is shoot threes. Because guess what? Can't really do it for 6 games straight in March. And when you have that bad game and you play a high-level team that has, that is of equal competition, you're going to get beat. And that's the real issue here. It's not about whether they can win 25 games during the regular season. Sure, they can. They can do that. It's about whether you can win 6 games in March, because I'll reiterate, the standard at Kentucky and the expectation is that you are in the Final Four competing for a national championship. Getting to the Sweet 16 still gets you fired. And that's just the reality of the situation. So it's a dangerous sort of system to bring because I haven't seen a team that wins a lot with this live by the three, die by the three mentality. You've proven that you've got to be like UConn. If you want to dominate, you've got to be good on both ends of the floor. You've got to be good on the perimeter. You've got to be good inside. You've got to do a little bit of everything really well if you'd like to get a chance at a national championship. And I just don't know that Mark Pope's system brings that.
No, and you're taking a look, too, like Mark Pope, again, he's going to be loved in Kentucky to start because he was a Kentucky player. But Kenny Payne also went to Louisville, and they said, okay, after 2 years, it was an absolute disaster. Are we saying it's going to be a disaster? No. Take a look at Mark Pope's coaching resume. Georgia assistant, Wake Forest assistant, BYU assistant, then gets the head coaching job at Utah Valley before becoming the BYU head coach. He is a good head coach, but let's also be honest with ourselves. As Mark pointed out, when you're taking a look at top 3 jobs, top 5 jobs, top 10 jobs, top 10 jobs don't mean it's the support that you get from the fan base because they're rabid supporters and they'll sell out the arena. They'll sell out the arena for anybody who's going to be their coach. A top job lets you know of this. Once Kentucky becomes available, you're starting to hear names like, oh no, Mike Krzyzewski wants to come out of retirement and take Kentucky because of how good that is. Jay Wright wants to come out of the TV booth and possibly coach Kentucky because of how good that is. In order to be a top job, you have to get the top applicants who all want that job, and it just was not the case here. Now, Mark, let's take this another step for Kentucky basketball, because it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to take Coach Cal's kids here and see if I can mend them into a championship. Well, Coach Cal's kids aren't there anymore. You lost an amazing recruiting class that went up in smoke. You lost the best players, whether through graduation or, let's just say, to the NBA draft or the transfer portal. This is a blank slate. But this isn't winning at BYU. This is winning at Kentucky. Is the talent level going to be there next year for Kentucky to make a tournament run? And when I say tournament run, making it into the tournament.
It remains to be seen. I mean, again, if he can find shooters, if Mark Pope can find shooters and guys that can fill up the bucket, yeah, they'll have a shot. I mean, look, we know what the SEC is, right? As far as the conference is concerned, it's going to be a 6 or 7 bid league, all things considered, unless something goes wildly wrong. So it would take a lot for Kentucky to not make the tournament. You're talking about a team that's hovering around 500 all year long. I don't know if they'll be that bad, but, the idea that they could only be a 20, 21 win team and be 21-11 kind of deal and be on the bubble, that may be more of the issue. I don't think they'll be hovering around 500. They should be better than that. But like you said, DRS, I mean, the athletes have gone, and Mark Pope has to do an incredibly quick turnaround here on putting some guys on the floor that want to play and can play. And it looks like they're all going to come from mid-majors, right? They're all going to come from lower conferences and lower teams that nobody's really heard of, with an opportunity to go play at Kentucky and hopefully put this team, into the NCAA tournament again.
I think that is probably true. We're going to go ahead and change track here a little bit. We are going to talk about the NFL draft. We are heading to the second pick in the NFL draft. Zinno, I think this market is wrong. Right now, Jaden Daniels is listed right around -300 to be the second pick, +250 to be the third pick. Obviously, he's got enormous odds to be a top 5 pick, which obviously on the other side means that Drake May is expected to fall to 3, maybe even further. He is +210 right now on the FanDuel Sportsbook to be the second pick. At best, I can tell, Zinno, this is mostly based on people assuming that because Marcus Mariota was signed as the backup quarterback for the Washington Commanders, it means that they want to have they wanted to have a mobile backup quarterback for their new mobile Jaden Daniels. Obviously, that ignores the fact that Drake May was a pretty solid rusher when he was at the University of North Carolina. What do you make of the number 2 pick market for the NFL draft?
I still believe that Drake May has a strong shot to go to Washington. There's a lot of ties in that Washington coaching staff to North Carolina. And oh, by the way, where did Drake May go? North Carolina. So that was the guy that they had originally eyed up. There is a certain amount of, white noise and smoke that comes around when it comes to the NFL draft of guys getting on one side and then going on the other, teams getting on one side, going on the other, just simply because they're trying to create markets that might not be there. They're trying to see if, they can misdirect other teams into doing X, Y, and Z. So it's really hard to believe what you hear at this point in time. And are the odds makers wrong in the draft? Yeah, they have been. I mean, it's not as tight of a market as an NFL game or even an NBA game would be from that standpoint. So I think Drake May going second overall still is worth an absolute shot, but Drake May seems like the kind of guy where if he doesn't go second, guess what? He falls out of the top 5 altogether. Like that kind of feels like it's feast or famine with him, because with all the J.J. McCarthy love that is starting to go, if May doesn't go number 2 and McCarthy ends up going 3, he might fall straight out of the top 5 when it's all said and done.
Let me ask you a question on this, Mark. If you're the general manager of the Washington Commanders, who are you picking between Jaden Daniels and Drake May?
I think the upside is higher for Jaden Daniels. I think the floor is lower for Drake May, if that makes any sense. And again, a lot of this is system-based in what they're going to be running in Washington. Is Drake May a better fit? Look, everybody gets enamored by the running quarterback, and I understand why. And we've seen Lamar Jackson. But, you know, the idea that you could still deliver a football on time, on target to a receiver is ultimately what the quarterback position is about. You need to get the best one of those guys to do it.
Yeah, can't wait to watch it play out. We're about a week away from the NFL draft, so it is coming up quickly here. In the next segment here, we're going to talk Major League Baseball with Mark, but also get an idea of some of the other quarterbacks maybe going in the first round of the NFL draft. Mark Zinno joining us for a second straight segment coming up next. It's the Dial right here, Sirius XM Channel 159.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hoffman right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Quarterbacks, and more quarterbacks coming up in the NFL draft. We're about a week away here. The SportsGrid Network certainly has you covered with a lot of live entertainment you're not going to want to miss next week. But before we get there, a lot more hot topics here. Donnie Wrightside along with Davis Maddock, joined by Mark Zinno, the mouth in the South. We got to get some opinions here because we're taking a look at some other notable NFL quarterback prospects. We just talked about Jaden Daniels and a little bit with Drake May. Obviously, Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix Jr. We're expecting, obviously, multiple quarterbacks to go in round number one. The one that's gaining a lot of steam here lately, it was J.J. McCarthy, and still, quite frankly, moving up the leaderboards. But it's also Michael Penix Jr. and the possibilities of him going in the first round. Talk to us about some of these quarterbacks and where they might be landing here, Mark, coming up in the draft next week.
I think McCarthy is definitively going to go in the top 10, maybe even the top 5. It wouldn't surprise me if 4 quarterbacks go in the first 4 picks. If the Cardinals traded out and said, guess what, we'll move back in the first round, get another first rounder next year because they have so much to deal with, that somebody jumps up at 4 and grabs J.J. McCarthy or whatever 4th quarterback it may be in the first 4 picks, which is really going to be interesting for the rest of the first round. That said, Michael Penix is a little bit of a question mark and head scratcher. I mean, I could see a team absolutely reaching on him, but I could also see him falling into the mid to late 20s. I think both of those things are absolutely on the table. Forget the injury concerns and everything else. I just look genuinely at the quarterback and go, is this a guy that you believe can, be the leader of an NFL franchise, and how good is he really? I don't know that we really have the good answer to that yet. I mean, what you saw in the national semifinal and the national championship game aren't really the whole thing. You look at several years of tape when you look at a quarterback, and sure, Penix has certainly ascended throughout his collegiate career, but I just don't know that there's a team that's really willing to go after him. I can tell you here in Atlanta, Falcons fans want the Falcons to draft this guy at 8, which I think is maniacal, but that's neither here nor there. So Penix is really going to be the guy I think that is interesting to watch, whether he stays in the first round or not. He may get the Jalen Hurts treatment, to be honest. He may get the treatment where he falls early into the second round, and the same could go for Bo Nix. I don't think Bo Nix is going in the first round. You would have to see an absolute crazy run on quarterbacks and somebody gets super desperate. But I say this routinely about drafting quarterbacks, guys. If you're not willing to take your quarterback in the first round as high as humanly possible, then actually do you really want that quarterback? You don't go to an auction and just give a mediocre bid if you want it. Don't go to the silent auction and write $10 on the sheet and hope nobody outbids you. You write a bid that's going to win. If you want a quarterback in the first round, you move heaven and earth to go get them as quick and as fast as possible, and it doesn't matter what you give up. That's the only philosophy for drafting quarterbacks in the NFL, or at least trying to get franchise quarterbacks in the NFL.
That is a pretty good point. If one of these teams is in love with Michael Penix Jr., if one of these teams is in love with Bo Nix, I think the most reported connection between those two teams is the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix. They're pretty in on him, if you believe the reporting. And the reporting obviously does not feature any direct quotes from Sean Payton or from the Denver Broncos front office, but it's pretty heavily connected there. We'll see. We are going to move now to Major League Baseball. We are going to focus in on the New York Mets, who are 7-3 in their last 10 games after a pretty disappointing start to the season. They had another rally last night against Jared Jones and the Pittsburgh Pirates. We're still waiting for Francisco Lindor to break out. Mark, are you a Mets believer? Do you even care? Or actually, on the other side, are you a Pirates believer? Do you think that this young team, all these top prospects finally getting called up? Jared Jones, pretty exciting last night. What did you make of this one last night?
Well, to deal with the Pirates first, it's great to see their start. Look, they're hitting the ball really well, and that's why they're winning games, but they're also getting above-average pitching. I think pitching is going to tail off. I think they'll come back to earth once we turn the calendar into May, and they'll start to normalize and level off. Now, last year, I think it was O'Neal Cruz got hurt, and everything just went right off the cliff when they started hot early. So they need that bat in the lineup, but this is a pitching staff, I think, that remains to be seen whether it can hold up over the better part of the season. I think the Pirates come back down to earth. I wouldn't count the Mets out yet. Yes, their rotation looks patchwork. Yes, their lineup doesn't look all that potent, and they play in a pitcher's ballpark that's a cavern for hitters that can't really score a ton of runs, so the Mets don't score a ton of runs. Still, I'm not going to count this team out yet. It's not a poorly constructed roster by any stretch of the imagination. If they can continue to get plus starts from Quintana like they got last night, who also beat the Braves in his last start before last night, and Luis Severino, who's going this afternoon, the guy who couldn't get an out in pinstripes across the river there in New York, now all of a sudden with the Mets has a very respectable 3 ERA to start the year, although, his 1.4 whip is going to be alarming and could come back to bite him in the butt here. But I wouldn't, I don't think the Mets are able to win that division, given the Phillies and the Braves' strong standing. But I think they absolutely could contend for a wild card and should be in contention throughout the year, especially if they can get Francisco Lindor going and the bats to really start popping.
That's the key. Once we get to that hitting weather here, certainly they hope Lindor can get over that Mendoza line and add some power in the middle of that lineup to sort of protect Pete Alonso. But if we're taking a look at what we might have thought would have been a World Series maybe preview to start the season, that was taking place between the Braves and the Astros. The question being, the Braves losing Strider, they're still going to be able to hit their way out of a paper bag? Absolutely, they've been doing that. It was a 6-2 victory last night, but the focus now comes on the Houston Astros. Davis and I talked earlier in the show. We're not exactly out on the Astros, and you might be finding value on them at this time. It is a stunning start for them, 6-13 overall, 83 runs scored, but giving up 105 runs. Your idea of the Astros here moving forward, is it a buy-on team, or you need a little bit more time to wait and see at this point, Mark?
I'm not buying them because their pitching isn't great. I mean, obviously they could still hit the ball, although they've been kind of shut down by the Braves, Braves starters the last 2 nights. But in fairness, the Astros pitching the last 2 nights have been really good. They just gave up runs and then 4 runs in each of the 9th inning in each of the last 2 nights. I'm not sure that happens again. And as a matter of fact, I played the Astros team total over 3.5 today against Max Fried. They hit left-handed pitching really well. Fried has got an 8.74 ERA. He looked like he finally calmed down in his last start, but that was against the Marlins, and the Marlins don't hit at all. The first 2 starts he had against the Phillies and Diamondbacks, teams that actually could hit, he gave up 10 runs in those 2 starts. So I would expect the Astros, who don't want to get swept at home, would bust out the whooping sticks today. You can get a favorable number at 3.5 for their team total. It's going to be a little bit juicy, but I think that the Houston Astros get to Fried early tonight. But I'm not going to buy on them. And, the Astros are a team that eventually is going to start to come back down to earth here. And they may be able to hit their way through the slump. But right now, against good teams and good pitching, it doesn't look like that's happening.
The futures market in Major League Baseball seems to be telling us either the Astros are going to figure it out, or Justin Verlander is going to come back and he's going to be awesome, or the Astros are going to make some trade for a starting pitcher that we don't see yet, because on the FanDuel Sportsbook, they're the 4th favorite to win the World Series this year at plus 950. They trail only the Dodgers at plus 350, the Braves at 5-1, and the Yankees at plus 650. Do you see any value on this board here, Mark?
I mean, everybody keeps telling me the Orioles are not a World Series team. Okay. I guess I could generally agree with you, but nobody thought the Rangers were a World Series team last year either, and they ended up doing it because the postseason in Major League Baseball is a little bit quirky. Is Corbin Burns the anchor and the ace that they need to carry them through the postseason? Because guess what, guys? That lineup, it's a bunch of names that nobody knows, and yet they just rake. I mean, Colton Cowser, the rookie, is leading in home runs and OPS rather, for the Orioles. And that's not to mention the guys that you do know, and Gunnar Henderson and Cedric Mullins and Austin Hayes. I mean, this is just a lineup from 1 through 9 that can beat you all over the place. So people keep telling me the Orioles aren't a World Series team. Okay, I'll listen to you and I'll have that conversation. But when you talk about value and a team that's undervalued, still, in my opinion, it's the Baltimore Orioles.
Maybe some value this afternoon. A lot of matinee baseball today in Major League Baseball, which is fantastic stuff. 3:07 start here up in the 6th. That's going to be the New York Yankees and the Toronto Blue Jays. Yanks cooling off a little bit after their hot start. Toronto trying to track them down. Stroman versus Gausman today. Take a look at the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's roughly a pick'em right now with a total listed at 8.5. Did the Yanks get a bounce-back game today in a start from Stroman?
I don't put too much into the Yankees coming back there. The Blue Jays have owned the Yankees over the last 3 years. Go look at their record. The Blue Jays, I think, are now 23-10 against the Yankees over the last 3 seasons. So they just had their number. The real question here with today, and I wouldn't touch this game with a 10-foot pole because I know the Yankees don't want to get swept, but Kevin Gausman, there might not be something right with him. You may find after this start, if it doesn't go well today, that he's headed to the IL, that something is wrong because he has not looked anything remotely close to a guy who was in Cy Young contention all year last year. He's been banged around. He hasn't gone deep in games, and you would like to think that maybe some of that's, hey, we just got to get him stretched out, but he just has not been effective. And the biggest alarm that he hasn't been effective is that he only has 10 strikeouts, despite the fact he's only lasted 9 in the third. But this is not a guy who, has that. He's just a guy who's got to run a 12 per 9 K rate, 11.5 per 9 K rate throughout his career. And right now, he's not getting guys out. And so there may be an issue there. I don't want to back Kevin Gausman in this spot. I certainly don't want to play against him because could he be bad for 3 starts in a row? Yeah. How much do you trust Marcus Stroman? He's looked pretty good so far. I mean, and again, that's another guy. Like when you talk about the Yankees, if he can continue to pitch at this level, it's a huge win for New York and the Yankees being able to be a legitimate World Series contender here. I know I was definitely harsh and guarded against the Yankees to start this year, and I still am to a certain extent. I don't know if this pitching will hold up, but Stroman has been very good here.
Yeah, revenge game for Marcus Stroman against the Toronto Blue Jays there. All right, our other matinee game out on the West Coast, we have Washington against the Dodgers, probably about the biggest mismatch that you can find right now in baseball, the pathetic Nationals against the Dodgers. I mean, is there anything here for us to put on the board? Maybe, look, we have some home run props. Maybe you lay the run line, maybe you go over the Dodgers team total.
I mean, I would still look at some home run props from the Dodgers. Jake Irvin is a guy that, throughout his career has struggled to keep the ball in the ballpark. Last year alone, gave up 20 home runs in 24 starts, and that's not good. So, I think that when you look at today, that's the way I'd play it. I'd probably look for runs to be scored, maybe taken over. I mean, the guy starting for the Dodgers here, Knack, has not made a start yet this year. Young kid. I mean, for crying out loud, he's wearing 26. Is he making his major league debut today? I think he is. And maybe the Nationals can get to him that way, but I would look to an over possibly in runs being scored.
We take a look at the Dodgers here on the season, 12-8 in overall, and coming into the season, that immovable object where we thought they would win every game. We know it's baseball, and they're going to lose games, particularly as maybe 260, 275 favorites at this point. Mark, what can you make of Mookie Betts your start and also his MVP looks? 5 for 5 last night. The guy does it all, including, if you need him to play shortstop as well.
I mean, if Ronald Acuna doesn't go 40-70 last year, Mookie Betts is the hands-down MVP, right? Like, I mean, it's just, you can go back to – if Aaron Judge doesn't hit 62, Shohei Ohtani is the hands-down MVP that year. I mean, this happens more often than not in baseball when it looks at it. So, I think if Betts puts up another campaign like he did last year, as long as you didn't get some statistical anomaly that shows up, that's your MVP in the National League.
He's Mark Zinno, the mouth in the South, bringing that heat, whether it's Kentucky basketball, Major League Baseball, or even the NFL draft. And by the way, today, a dozen games will start before 4:10 Eastern p.m. It's a matinee. Thanks, Mark, for joining us. We'll certainly talk to you soon here. Coming up next, Fade the Public.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Time flies when you're having fun here on the early line. 2 hours down. Short segment before we hit hour number 3 with a lot more hot topics, which does include NBA action and certainly Major League Baseball action. But this time of the show, we like to fade the public, and we like to take a look at what the public is coming back and answering questions that we're handing out. Question today at the SportsGrid account at SportsGrid right here on X. What is the best bet for tonight's play-in games? We gave the betting public 4 choices tonight. The Philadelphia 76ers at -5.5, the Heat at +5.5, and or the Bulls -3, along with the Hawks +3. The only thing disrespectful in here is that the Philadelphia 76ers aren't running away with the voting process here, but also the hashtags here. Okay, NBA play-in, gambling X, we get that. But the @ signs, at Rightside VP and at Ben Scott Stevens. Where's at Davis Maddock in this one, Davis? Come on now.
I mean, look, sometimes the wires get crossed. They're used to Ben being here. Ben doesn't want to hang out with us this morning. He doesn't want to talk about how the Philadelphia 76ers are clearly the best bet here, right? Look, I know, Donnie, your mental health is basically just directly tied to whatever is going on with Joel Embiid's meniscus. If his meniscus has a good night, 76ers, they're undefeated with Embiid in the lineup since he came back from that injury. And this is actually what the Heat did, right? The Heat lost the first play-in game last year and made the NBA Finals. So I'm not even dooming the Miami Heat here, but I do think that the 76ers is the right side tonight.
Oh, I like that. I like that draw in. And by the way, being a longtime Philadelphia fan, you know what probably is supposed to happen? The Flyers get knocked out of the playoffs last night. 76ers lose tonight. It's a question mark if Joel Embiid is going to be able to play in that final game in the play-in round. And also Bryce Harper goes down with an injury against the Colorado Rockies. That's usually what we look forward to in the city of brotherly love. But tonight, how about this? 33% of that vote coming in on the Philadelphia 76ers. They are the top dogs right now on the SportsGrid poll. What is the best bet for tonight's play-in games? Once again, Sixers Heat, Bulls, and Hawks. We're going to cover that all in hour number 3. A lot more hot topics to go. And we're waiting to see who's going to be the official 1 through 8 in both conferences here. Hour number 3 now officially on deck. Davis and Donnie right here on a Wednesday morning. We'll be right back.
smarter to be on SportsGrid.